Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the axle bar. And when I talk about this doesn't mean just the axle bar. This can apply to a lot of different tools and things that we use, implements, specialty bars. But something I've said in the past is that awkward lifts can create a different type of strength. All right, awkward lifts create a different type of strength. That's one of the reasons I talk about different bars. It's why I talk about lifting against chains, against bands, because they're awkward and they put your body into bizarre positions sometimes against unpredictable strength curves. It teaches you how to find your groove and lift against awkward stuff. And that really carries over to when you miss your groove and say powerlifting meet, right? When you go to hit a lifetime PR, if you miss your groove, that can be real valuable to learning how to get that bar up anyways. Same thing when you get stuck into different real world environments like sports, contact sports. I don't care whether it's MMA or football. You can get put into bizarre positions. Having strength in uncertain, awkward positions can be real valuable when you have to push or pull as hard as you can. But let's come over and talk about the awkwardness as far as this goes for hypertrophy, because the axle bar, I mean, obviously one of the big benefits, the obvious benefit is the forearm and grip training. All right, that's very, very obvious, both for pushing and pulling, and it does a totally different thing for each. I mean, we could look at the pushing, and again, it just strengthens your forearms, right? Because you have to grip that big bar, and in some cases you have to use slightly less weight, but we still get really, really good neuromuscular activation. And there's been some studies actually on this, stuff like the axle bar. The pulling, it just straight up trains your grip, right? It trains your grip. Phenomenal grip training device, and you guys will see me doing pin leg rows with it here in a bit also. So I just worked at all of this from one workout, some footage. But one of the other things to think about, a bar like this doesn't have markings on it. So we're not only dealing with the awkward gripping, dealing with a bar that doesn't have marks. It's hard to tell if you're centered. What does that mean? That means a lot of times you have to re-grip it. You've got to re-grip that bar. It means every single set. Because when you're doing what I'm doing, these are lots of sets of 10, right? This is all my volume training to get bigger. It's how we get big. You know, a lot of times people get on a machine and are like, oh yeah, because I can have this consistent, beautiful groove. But the same people will talk about having a consistent groove, right? And having everything perfect, and a machine's great for that. Because they can work on just the primary movers. But the same people will talk about needing exercise variation to really work all aspects of a muscle. You'll even see researchers who look at this stuff for bodybuilders, like Tad Broenfeld, right? Sorry, I'm being facetious there. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. I'll be polite. Okay. No need to be insulting. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld. Dr. Gaines. Does all these studies, and he said, look, having some exercise variations to hit stuff from different angles does seem to produce, potentially in some cases, more hypertrophic potential. Well, look at what happens when you take a bar like this. Your grip width changes every time. Why? Because even if I'm doing, say, a closer grip like that, particularly with a closer grip, it's very easy to get it uneven. And sometimes in the middle of the set, you have to bring one of your hands in or out. Well, that means we're changing the angle slightly. We're working the muscles slightly different on every single set because our grip could end up being an inch different in terms of width. When you do a normal closed grip, I mean, it's pretty consistent, right? We just put our hands right there on the edge of the smooths, right? Very easy. Or we go an inch out, depending on what grip or whatever we're using. Something like this, it's more awkward because you can't find that, and it's off center sometimes. It's off center sometimes. I mean, sometimes one side gets loaded slightly heavier than the other, and then the next set you try to compensate the other direction. And you get another set where it's slightly loaded, maybe an inch further to the right or left on each set. or you have to stop in the middle of the sets and readjust, right? Because it is uneven, and maybe it's too far uneven and it just doesn't feel right. You can't make it work. Stop in the middle of your rows and reshift sides. We accumulate varied angles dealing with this awkwardness. Think about all this in terms of hypertrophy. A tool like this, let's say you do like I did with this. A lot of my supplemental work right now, I use the axle bar. I use it for my max work. I use it for all this volume training, to get big, to get thick. But it's an awkward barbell. It's awkward to grip, so it builds forearms. It can be awkward in terms of determining grip width, so it can pull you to one side more than the other. You're always having to readjust it to find your grooves. It means if you do 5 different sets, every one of them is going to be a slightly different grip width. It means things like pecs, shoulders, lats, arms, everything get worked just slightly different. Right? This gives us inherent exercise variation. And we're always struggling with stabilizers because we always have a first rep that's off a little bit. We have to stabilize it. It gets more core involvement. All right? I mean core. I mean obliques, abs, intercostals, serratus, everything. All this different things depending on what exercise you're doing. You put in a lot of awkward positions there. A lot of times on a first rep having to balance it. Back and forth, left and right. Uncertain load. Right, this makes you strong. And it makes you strong because it makes you big. You know, we talk about stuff like this and people say, well, I don't see how that makes you stronger. Well, because it makes you bigger. We're hitting more angles. Hitting different functions. We're having to use stabilizers a little different all the time. It will help thicken you up. Because that's the key to strength. The key to strength is having as much muscle as possible. People forget that. And when I say that, they get caught up in the, oh, well, just my pecs and biceps or whatever. No, it's everything. Muscle. There's a reason some bodybuilders are not strong, obviously because they don't lift heavy. But it's because they don't have every muscle fully developed. Maybe they don't have strong erectors. Maybe they don't have a lot of the different muscles through their trunk are not as developed as you would think. And they still might have a big waist because they have massive organs and guts and visceral fat from the stuff they abuse. So it's not even keeping their waist small because you're not going to get a big blocky waist from this sort of stuff. It's not what's going to do that. There's genetics and then there's visceral fat causing that. Or just straight body fat. You're not going to build enough muscle, especially if you're really jacked. If you're putting a lot of muscle on your back and quads and shoulders, you're not going to have a big waistline relative to all that just from lifting weights. But it builds all these things up. Right? These awkward lifts tend to build more support musculature through the whole body. And people who don't train with awkward stuff, they don't always have that. And that's the only reason they might not be as strong as they look. That's usually a factor. That if those same people had just developed all their support musculature with those big pecs and quads and hamstrings and traps and everything that they built on the machines or with the smaller movements, they actually would be strong. Because those muscles are strong. Those muscles that they've built up are still going to be tremendously powerful. Right? If you have big pecs, they're going to produce a lot of force. It's not possible for them not to be able to. It's just that you don't have enough muscle everywhere to utilize it all correctly. And you just don't practice lifting heavy. But they would be strong if they did that. And so we come over to the point of that. It just builds stuff up better. Right? It can just improve general strength. It just makes you stronger. Makes you stronger. And it's making you stronger because it's putting more gains on you. because that's what we know based upon all the data. The more muscle that you have throughout your entire body, just the stronger you are going to tend to be on any exercise that we test you on. Right? You're going to be stronger at anything we test you on. Size equals strength. And lifts like this that are awkward can be very, very valuable tools in just making sure that we fully develop everything for all the reasons I stated in this. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.